Electric trucks are here, and so is another entry in our series where we check in on the industry and ask how electrification is going. We've been asking OEMs and other companies throughout the trucking industry how their customers have responded to electric trucks. The good and the bad, the questions and the answers. For this episode, I caught up with Rosa of Penske Truck Leasing. Penske has been making news for years with their investment in electric trucks, offering a variety of makes, models, and classes of electric truck. Their most recent news includes a May announcement of a collaboration with Daimler and Carrier Transicold on an all-electric refrigerated medium-duty truck for leasing customers that carry temperature-controlled freight. With this in mind, we thought they would have a unique perspective on how things are going for them and for their customers. Let's go to the interview with Paul.
Yeah, so Alex, we have many different products across all of the classes. Some of them are now in operation, across class 3 through 8, of course, and then some are in evaluation, and those can be either from the original traditional OEMs and or many of the startups. So it just is a question of what status some of them are in. But we have so many of them right now that we're operating with customers that are using them in their actual operations, and then other customers that we use for evaluation purposes that have get different ones each time so they can give us a nice comparison. So a lot of activity going on as it relates to the vehicles that we're operating.
Yeah, definitely. I know that you guys have been very active with, electrification and getting into different types of trucks. So I wanted to ask what the response has been like so far. And I wanted to ask from two perspectives, from the fleet manager perspective and also how the drivers have been responding.
Sure. So let's start with the drivers first. I think that might be a better launching point, because the response from the drivers has been nothing short of tremendous and all positive. They absolutely love them. They love the power that they provide with that instant torque, if you understand the concept of what an electric vehicle can do for you. They don't have the smell of diesel type of thing. The noise level is very calm. But the other part about the noise level being so positive is also a negative, because the trucks are so quiet that people can't hear it. And that's the only concern that drivers have brought up. But other than that, overwhelming positive response from the drivers on how they're performing, their environment that they're in, and so on. And that's across light duty all the way on up to class 8, including a yard tractor. So that is very favorable when you say you can pull a thread through all the different class of vehicles and get the same response from the drivers. So that's been our experience so far. I think you said on the fleet managers, was that the other part of it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so we have to understand that a company is not going to go into this unless they're going through the necessary evaluation as to why they want to do it. Are they doing it because they know the truck works for their application, and thus the fleet manager is going to be getting the benefits of that? Are they doing it because they need to evaluate something to see if it's going to work for their operation? Or are they doing it because it's part of their sustainability effort? So it kind of depends on where that company is, and that's going to be a different response from the fleet manager. At least that's been the experience that we've had so far. So we have a fleet manager that's doing this for their sustainability goals. That doesn't mean that it's going to work perfectly for their operation, but that's what they need to do, and that's what their response is. We need to do this for our company objectives right now. On the other one, where it's, hey, we want to try this to see when will it work for our operation. So they take it for either a stretch of time, either from a rental perspective or one of our evaluation customers. And then they'll say, okay, this will work for one route or 2 routes or 3 routes, and then they'll make a decision if they're going to go forward with it. And the third one is they've already done the evaluation, and it fits some or most of their application, operation, routes, whatever, and they say they need to do this and want to do this for their own reasons. So it really depends on where they are. When we do get the response from them, because they're going into this with open eyes, and we have this very, very robust exchange of, does this work for you? Do you understand what you're getting into? It's usually very positive. So if you put in the upfront activities, review the vehicle with them, review the route with them, give them a chance to try the vehicle. They understand that it's going to take care of the business needs that they have from a load and range perspective. It's all positive. It's all favorable. It doesn't mean it doesn't come without an additional cost, and they understand that as well. So that's the trade-off. I don't want to portray this as everything is tremendous, but there's a cost that comes with that we have to recognize as well. And that's what fleet managers are telling us when we work with them.
Right, and that makes sense. You kind of got into this a little bit in your answer there, but I did want to ask about, from the perspective of bringing in electric trucks into the Penske fleet, what have been some of the challenges of that, and what have been some of the successes?
Yeah, so I actually like to turn the challenge word into learnings, because we know that in the early phase of a new technology, you can call it a challenge, but there's going to be learnings from it. When will it work? When won't it work? What are its abilities? What are its limitations? And that's what I'd say is the takeaway, is that if you want to call it a challenge / I call it a learning, it can only work for certain applications. It's only going to work for certain routes. It has range limitations because of the battery technology today. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. I mean, they want to have a vehicle, but they can't because it doesn't handle their duty cycle, doesn't handle their range that they need. So that's been tough for many customers who are eager to do this. You get into the realities or the learnings of the delays in getting infrastructure. I mean, there's no way around it. It takes time, and people don't realize that until they get into this. You may have heard from other times that we have put information out there, but I usually refer to this as the EV train has left the station and it has to go with both rails. One rail is going to be the truck itself, one is going to be the infrastructure. You can't have one without the other. Customers think that, hey, if I'm going to go get a truck in the next month or so, I can quickly get my infrastructure. They don't realize until after they do their due diligence or they have conversations and meet with the respective player or players. That could be with us, could be with the utility company, could be with the infrastructure provider, is that it's going to take quite a long time to get their infrastructure in. So that's been a learning / challenge to get this off the ground faster. I think another one is that you have to give up some payload in order to have this work for most customers, unless they're not they're not weighing out, they're cubing out. You have to recognize that there's a bigger cost structure here, and that can be a limitation for many customers. I don't know if that's a challenge. You can say it's a challenge to overcome the additional cost, but I look at it as more of a learning. We now know what the cost of the vehicle is. We now know how much it's going to cost to operate it. We know what the cost for the infrastructure is. Can that work for a customer? It just depends on their situation. So those would be some of the learning. Some of the successes I also say is that we've proven that the technology can work for many applications. We know what its capabilities and limitations are, just as we started off. We know that it's going to have some durability opportunities going forward. When we say we're going to operate it, this is an unknown piece right now. So you have the success, you have the learnings, and you have something that's in between. And what's in between is we still don't know how these vehicles will perform over 5, 6, or 7 years. And that's a big takeaway that we're also keeping a close eye on. But one of the successes is that in the early 3 years, where we've been operating a substantial number of production units, they're doing quite well. So another success is that so far, their durability is doing pretty well. One of the other learnings, kind of just not to jump back and forth, but as they pop into my mind, one of the other learnings is that when there is an issue with one of the technology vehicles, could be light duty, could be medium, could be heavy, whatever, there isn't a robust supply chain for replacement parts, because you don't know how many you have to have on a shelf. You may only have a couple of points of distribution to get them, so it could be a longer time to get the replacement part depending upon what it is. So that was another learning, is that until this is more proliferation of these vehicles across the country, and thus more disbursement points for parts, you could have a little bit more time before you get the vehicle back up. So uptime could be a bit of something to consider. So those are the basic things that you have happening with a new technology that gets launched, and we understand that. I never look at this as a negative. I never look at this as a challenge. I look at it as, hey, we have to go forward and evaluate. We have to understand, and thus you're going to have learnings. And however somebody wants to characterize it, though, I mean, that's what they have to do. But I look at it all from a positive perspective and a half full perspective, because we're learning so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's definitely true. I mean, there's no way to know how this will work without just going and doing it. And,
exactly.
we're only a few years into this. That's what we're doing now. That's kind of the phase that we're in as an industry.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really understand that you have to go through a full duty cycle or full useful life, first useful life, not duty cycle, full useful life of new technology to really see how it's going to perform against its ICE comparable or just altogether at whatever metrics you're gauging it at. And that's still the unknown. One of the other learnings that we've had, Alex, is that we know from the first vehicles that we got in 2019, which were pre-production units, to when we got our production units in 2021, there's going to be iterations of this technology, which means we're saying we have to evaluate this technology over a full first useful life, which could be 4 to 6 to 7 years, depending upon somebody's viewpoint. Well, if you keep improving the product and you're not at its leveling off, this is what it's always going to be, then you're recalibrating that period of time where you're evaluating the durability. And that is another big learning that we've taken away, is that we kind of have to keep resetting the timer to say, okay, we got a brand new whatever, but now it's going to take us 5 or 6 more years to evaluate how that one's going to perform, because they've made significant changes to either the componentry, the design, whatever. And but that's okay. That's what happens with the new technology. And we're so early in the game. It's so new that we have to really so one of the other learnings I'd say, or successes, is let's take a step back. Let's let this happen. Let's not force this too quickly, because decisions are going to be made that aren't the best decisions when you're making them too early in the evolution of a new technology. At least that's how we're looking at it.
Right. And that is a good point about the trucks are going to be changing, because the OEMs are learning along with us. This is the first time that those trucks have been out running routes, doing these real world routes that they are doing now. They can't know everything they need to know until that happens. So they are going to be changing, and they're going to keep changing.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Good points.
So what would you, from the experience that you've had so far, if a fleet was talking to you and they're maybe considering something electric, but they're a little on the fence, what would you say to them?
Well, I can tell you what we're saying to people today already as we meet with them regularly. We have routine conversations with many of our customers, and what we guide them on is that do a fleet plan, have a fleet strategy. And what is in that? Well, there's a lot in there, but as a high level is, when are you planning to electrify part of your fleet or all of your fleet? And when you put a marker to that, you first have to understand, does it work for all your routes? And if it doesn't, you may have to add vehicles, and that's a problem in itself. What we found out that's another learning, is that many of the fleets that want to do, if they have 6 or 7, they may have to have 8 or 9 vehicles to handle all the routes, because they got to break them up, and you need more vehicles to do that. But you have to have a fleet strategy. How many and when? You need to have a facilities or a location strategy. Are you going to be in the location that you're at right now? Is it leased versus owned? Do you have to work with the landlord to see if they're going to allow you to put infrastructure in? If not, then how can you have your fleet strategy take shape if you can't be in the operational location that you're in? So those go hand in hand. And then you have to have an infrastructure strategy. What type of infrastructure do you want to have? Can you have DC fast charging at your facility? Do you want DC fast charging? Do you need DC fast charging? And then how many do you have to have? That gets into the whole conversation about how are you going to charge them? Are you going to charge them overnight? You need to charge them multiple times through the day. Again, that's part of the fleet strategy. So there's a 3-part approach that we tell our customers they need to be thinking about. Think about your fleet. Also, are you going to expand the fleet in the short term, or are you going to be the same size because you've always been the same size? That's another element of the fleet strategy. Got to have a location strategy, and you got to have an infrastructure strategy. That's what we're giving and as part of that infrastructure strategy, you got to meet with the utility companies early on. And that gets deeper into the infrastructure plan that somebody has to have. So those are the things that we're telling our customers today that they need to be thinking about.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you were saying before about, when you were talking about infrastructure and how much needs to be planned ahead of time. It's not as simple as, you pick up the keys, now you got a new truck. There's a lot more that goes into it that fleets have not had to do before.
Absolutely. You're right on it.
I think that's about all I had to ask. Is there anything else that you wanted to share about, your experience with electric trucks so far?
I guess I would say we're still excited about where this can go and where it's already headed. We know there's a lot to still figure out, which is okay. I know all the OEMs and the startups, as well as the component providers in this space, are doing so much work to try and bring this to life. But everyone understands that we're talking with and we're working with is that this is going to take time. This isn't going to happen overnight. This isn't going to be adoption is going to go from where it is to 25% of every vehicle that's built and so on. This is going to take a little bit longer than anyone thought. And I usually use this analogy as well with others, is that we're kind of in the first quarter of a 4-quarter football game. And you might even say we're still in the pregame strategy session. And what's going to happen, in my opinion, is after a period of time, which would equate to 2 quarters of the game, there's going to be a halftime, and we're going to reassess. And we're going to sit there and say, all right, what do we have to do now? Sort of like the question you asked. What are the learnings that we have now? And do we have to adjust strategy as a result of that? Is there enough infrastructure to handle what's there? Is there enough power that's out there for the demand that's needed? That'll be that kind of halftime conversation. Do I finish the rest of my fleet, or do I wait for another period of time? Has technology advanced where it's now a more mature, at a more mature level? Has the battery improved, or will it improve very soon? So I take a pause. I think that's what we're going to eventually go through, which is okay. It's like it's not a bad thing to go through that cycle. And that's what we try and kind of instill in our customers' minds as well as into our own company here about. We just got to go at this at a fair pace.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a good analogy. All right. Well, thanks so much, Paul, for taking the time to do this interview today. Appreciate it.
Happy to. Thanks so much. Good talking to you.